Nope. All right. All right. Welcome. We're recording now. So this is going to be an R heavy, not heavy. It'll be like an overall intro to R for what we're going to be doing today. And in the email that we sent out, if you would like to follow along, you can. By no means you have to. So first, I just wanted to point out there are going to be some graphics here, like the one that you can see on your screen, hopefully. That is done by Allison Horst, so please follow her on Twitter and check her out. She's really great and is actually employed by R Studio right now and is starting to develop some of their images for their packages and stuff like that. So that's really cool and really exciting. But first, we have to start with our tweet of the week. Oh, and we'll start with this one. It was supposed to reorder and it didn't. This was one that Kate found. So Kate, would you like to just talk about why you thought this was a good one?
Yeah, I just I think something we can discuss later is how I think, media training isn't something a lot of grad students know or like a lot of PIs or any researchers know about. I personally hate psychology today. I think it's problematic but also think it's hilarious that they decided to compare social media use to heroin. This is also particularly fitting for me because I'm working on us putting together a grant for a study I'm going to work on next year, and I was looking at social media surveys and all of last week. I think I talked a little bit about reaching out about that, and I think there's a lot of assumptions that go along with social media as being inherently harmful. I think as a society, we've agreed that heroin's relatively harmful. I don't think we're quite there yet with social media, but, TBD.
And this is from Jean Twang. I can never pronounce her name correctly, I don't think, but there was a story. She's a very big researcher in terms of like cohort-like effects. So looking at how particular groups of individuals from older generations may perceive things differently. And right now, her thing seems to be attacking social media. And there was a big multiverse analysis, which is really cool and something we might be able to check out later, that showed that social media use has the same impact on well-being as eating potatoes. So this was I guess a recent article by her kind of combating that. But then on to my tweet of the week, which is the back one. And this is, I think, really highlights a lot of stuff that I think it's my sense of humor, but then also just what we're hopefully going to be working on with making sure, because you're going to be writing code, you're going to be doing stuff for future you, and how can you kind of fix that and figure out what's going on there. And plus my daughter's really into Scooby-Doo, so it was like totally on brand, which was great. But we will go ahead and continue on. This is going to be a little bit more of me sharing my screen than we normally do. So if there's anything that you need me to slow down on or explain a little bit more, please let us know either through the chat, or you can turn your video on and let us know. This is going to be, we want this to be as helpful for you. And if you're watching later on, hopefully this goes at a good pace, but you can always pause it, go back to it. And we're going to start from the surveys. It looks like there was a wide range in how comfortable people are with R. And so I'd like to just start at the beginning and talk about what R is, and then transition into how we can use it and implement it into our own research practices. These are hex stickers, which every R package is a hex sticker, and I have 0 of them, and I'm really sad about that. So if I know we were plugging Zotero last time and trying to get hookups with Zotero, but RStudio, come on, send us some stickers. And I went all the way to the end. Man, How do I do that? Okay. I am getting back to what I was doing. And so one of the things that I think is really interesting when it comes to teaching R and learning about R is a lot of times the way that people do it is they give you code and then they have you run it, and that's it. So that was why in one of the questions we asked about what are some things that you've done in R, and a lot of it has been you just copy and paste the code that is given to you by your professor or by whoever's teaching. And I think that can be a great way to start. But the way that I like to do this is that I just like to guide and highlight some important points that I think are good to create good practices moving forward. And I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with certain things before moving on. Just because there can be a good foundation that's needed so that you can feel comfortable when you do run into a problem. If your copy paste code doesn't work, what do you do next? And so that's why I will prepare little for this. And that's not to reflect how much I care about what we're doing here. It's more, I want it to be real time, what it is that I do to figure out certain steps. And I think one of the biggest misconceptions about getting comfortable with R is that you should be able to sit down and just code, and you should be good and never have to check anything if you're a good coder or comfortable with R. That is not the case at all. It is, you need to be comfortable with finding solutions to the problems that you face. So I'd like to, like I said, we want to future-proof these things. So you're your own worst collaborator, and that is now trademarked. It's not, but don't go ahead and steal it from me. But we want references for you to take moving forward. We recognize that this isn't, you're not going to be with us forever. We don't know what we're going to be doing forever. So getting real deep, real quick. Now let's see, I prepared these slides a little bit and we'll see how they go. One thing that you'll find about anything related to R is people who they think they're funny in trying to make R puns wherever they can. So there is a whole R section walkthrough that is called YAR, and it's all about like pirates and stuff. But what we're going to do, this is just a general outline of things that I'd like to eventually get to. Hopefully with this first section, we'll get through that first main bullet point of getting comfortable with R and making it reproducible, talking about different aspects of it, and then loading in some data potentially. Moving forward, I think it would be great if we have time and if there's interest in talking about what an R Markdown document is and how you can make APA formatted manuscripts in R that have your code, that have everything, and it can even format it to a particular journal. There are even packages that format things to the specific journal, which is really nice and really helpful. And I don't know why it's not done more. So hopefully this is something that you've already done. I'm not going to walk through it, but there is, you install R, and the reason why it has all of these multiple, they're called mirrors, and it's just R is an open source language, so it is held on multiple servers across the world, and each of those links is a particular location where one of the mirrors is. And usually you just want to pick one that's closest to you, because that's going to be your central repository where your program is going to look for these libraries or for these particular things. And it's just really, it will make things a little bit faster if you're not trying to go across the world and grab stuff, but it's not really that big of a deal. And then there's RStudio, which they just released they released 4.0, I think. So that's something that people are really excited about. But the difference between using R and RStudio is just you can think of it as a user interface for R. R, if you look at it, is not good to look at. It is just, if any of you have used M+, it's just, you just get a console, you get one screen, you type everything in there, and that's it. With RStudio, you're able to use these other types of documents like notebooks or Markdown. And if any of you have visited our website, that is how I created that, is through RStudio, that I'm able to integrate these things and lay it all together. So that's why you need to have both, and they are independent of one another, but you always need base R, or like that, the original R, in order to move forward. Feel free to jump in with any questions you have too. You can ask through the chat. Kate, I think, is monitoring that, or I will. We'll figure it out. I think Kate's doing it. All those chats that are coming in. All right. So we have that, and then the next thing, there are some default options that come with R, and what you want to do is make sure that you are making your documents reproducible. And so the idea behind this is that you're able to write your script, you're able to do all of your analyses, and then you can send it to somebody, or you can move it from one computer to the next, and you're able to do the same exact thing again without any difficulty. So that's going to be a lot of the goals that I have with laying this foundation. And one of the first ones is going to be updating how it saves your R history. So you might, if you've ever worked within RStudio, you might be familiar that when you close something, it asks if it wants to save the R data file, and you don't need that. So what you're going to do, I'm trying to, let's see, here we go. I'm going to share my screen here in a second once I close some things. And so you should be able to see RStudio now. And what you're going to be doing is you will navigate up to the tools section. Are you still able to, oh, no, hang on, let's see. Is RStudio still there, Kate? Cool. So you'll navigate over to the tools section and go down to global options, and you'll see this workspace image. Usually default, this section here that's checked right under workspace is set to restore the R data file, and it's set to save the workspace whenever you exit. The reason why I removed that, and there may be some additional reasons why you would want to keep that, but for the work that I've been doing, it is not working with large data sets, so I don't need to worry about long load times. What this is going to do, your .r data file is saving your environment. It is saving every piece of information that you've created. And the reason why that is not, it's counter to having a reproducible document, because if you make a mistake or you're calling on something that you created in the console, or that it's not in your script itself, when you share it or you try to work on it on a different computer, it's not going to work. And it can be very frustrating, and I don't want that to happen. So that's one of the main tips that I have. I'll talk about my hatred for set working directory here in a second, but what I usually like to do here is have you make R your own. So you can go still in this options, you want to go to appearance, and please pick different types, if you want to look more like you're a true coder or a gamer or whatever, you want a dark background, or you can go something a little bit, some of these are, people can even make their own, and so some of the ones that I have are like people made them on GitHub and I downloaded them and installed them, but please like pick your favorite. You can pick how big your font is, you can pick what kind of font you want, but I usually go for a darker background. It's easier on the eyes and something that has a little bit of color in it. So pick your own, share which editor theme you used, because I think that's always fun to see what people pick. Questions so far? Are we doing good? I ask for questions so that I can take a drink of my coffee.
It's good for me. I really like the chaos theme, not just because of the name. I don't know why, just like adding color into like makes it's easier to read.
Yeah, it can be really, really nice.
Night bright. Ooh.
All right, so then the way that, let's check to see, why don't I just do this? Yeah, that'd be better. Okay, so, and these slides I'll also share. I should have done that before, but I have some links here. There is a really nice, what they forgot to teach you about R, which is called WTF, which I think is really great. And they have some nice slides or nice speaking points about certain things. So when you have some free time, you can go and browse those things. Let's see. So I already talked about this, but you want to update the appearance. You can even update the way that the panes are laid out. And I used to do this. So having the console here, and then having your environment in the top right, and then just like your files and viewer down here. You can organize those however you like. It's nice to, since I've been teaching and showing people R, I usually have it in the default configuration, but that's also something that you can do if you want to only see the console and your script. You can do that too. Now on to talking about what kind of the foundation to R and how you get it to do some of the things that you want it to do. There are lots of functions that are that come with R that are fairly limited, but they can do most of what you want to do. However, there are these specific packages that have been developed that let you do a lot of awesome and amazing things. So I always like to stop and make sure everyone's oriented to this and how it looks. Based on this Hadley Wickham quote, which you all know how to read. So I will let you do that. But the way that you have to install these packages first. So it is a way that these people develop this collection of code, and then you want to get it. And usually within any other software program or things like that, you have to pay for these things. R is open source and free. So all you have to do is say install.packages, and it will install all of the code functions within it. And the way that I usually like to think about this is based on that Hadley Wickham quote. So you have that repository, which is that mirror that you set when you installed R. And wherever that is your repository. I always forget what CRAN stands for. Kate, do you know what it stands for? Okay, cranberries. But it's the central repository where all of the R scripts and things are stored. So that is where you're looking to install your packages from. And the way that I like to think about it is that is a library. That is a library where all of the books are saved and stored. And then when you want to then say, I need to read a book. So I want to go and read about the Tidyverse. Thank you. The Comprehensive R Archive Network. Cranberries. I was close.
Did you Google that?
And you want to, yes, Google is your friend always. And so you want to read a book, and you want to read the book about the Tidyverse. So the Tidyverse is a collection of resources. And so you ask for it from the library, you go pick it up by saying install packages. And then what that does is it goes and it puts that book on your bookshelf. So now it's on your bookshelf and you have it in your library which probably looks like this because everybody's library looks just like that. And there is a stump for some reason. I don't know. But then you want to read it and you want to use it in your code. So then you have to go and grab that book from your library, and you have to open it so that you know what you're reading and what is being used. And so that's when you call the library, your own personal library, and you say, hey, I want to read the Tidyverse. I want to use this. And then you go and you sit on a pier and read a book, which would be nice. So that can be helpful in just thinking about how we get this information, and then where it is that you're putting that library call in your script so that you're able to signal to anybody who has your script to say, hey, you need these things. You need to get these books before you can run the rest of the code. So these are other points that you can read about, but what I really wanted to highlight was this idea of, so now we'll take some time and talk about how to start a script. And there are, now I will open up my RStudio. And so there are 3 different types of text scripts that you can use. And the way that you access those is either up here, and you can, as you're starting a new project. So this is, we are starting a new analysis where we're going to analyze some data that I had already sent out to everybody, but you can access on our website. I think we'll probably put that in the blog post. But the 3 big ones that you will most likely be using is the R script, the R notebook, and an R markdown file. So we'll just take a look at what each of those look like. The R script is just going to be a basic text file. It would be the same as you going here and opening up Notepad. And it would look, these function identically. And what a lot of people have done in the past when they are running R just in the R console, the regular R, not using RStudio, is you would save your scripts in a notepad or a text file, and then you would copy paste things in and then run them. I hardly ever use scripts. I think that the functionality that notebooks or markdown documents have are amazing and can really add to your analyses and just understanding and reproducibility of your code. So when you are typing in everything in a script is runnable code. So if I were to type this, and then I wanted to write some code here, and then this would run, if I were to run this, this would run, and it would say, like, I don't know what this is. So if I wanted to make any comments, I would have to comment it out, which is helpful. You want to be commenting throughout your code, but this can it can get a little bit difficult to interpret and read. What I usually like to use is a notebook or a markdown document, and I usually will go to a markdown document, but they look very similar. The markdown document just has some additional capabilities, but a notebook is just going to be a lighter version of a markdown document. So what this is going to look like is there is text that you're able to type, and then there are these code chunks where this is where all of the code actually fits. So I will also open up a markdown document because this is what I'll be using as we move forward. And you're able to put titles and then how you want it to be output. This can be changed down the road. Usually it just defaults to HTML. And then the title is anything that you want it to be titled. So for the project itself. And we will title it And so all this does is it puts your title here, and it has a header and everything. And so this is a R Markdown document, and here is an a notebook. So there's just slight differences here. You have a lot more capability with using a Markdown document, and that's what we'll be using. So, like I said, this is what it will default to, and what this is gonna, you have all of these code chunks, and you're able to type and write and also call in particular things. So what we're gonna want to do, and you can give this a shot, is if you try to knit right now, it is going to say, you haven't saved this yet. So this is where that Untitled 2 comes in. We have not saved this script. So what you want to do is actually save it first, and I'm going to save it. I'll save it to the desktop, and we can name it however you would like to name it right now. So what we will do is, I think this is going to be the craft beer data that I found. So we can do that. And now we have it saved, and you can see, let's see, how do I want to?
And while Dustin is doing that, just to jump in really quickly and talk about making comments on your code. What, from a lab management perspective and from a hit by a bus perspective, I think one of the most important things you can do is have a well commentated code. You know, I've recently come across this myself. It was an SPSS, but we had like a file that was weirdly downloaded, and then adding further mysteries, the way that the reverse items that we used, the paper that we used to refer to for reverse coding was incorrect. So any of the resources you would normally go to weren't good resources. And so that we left that in the code so the next person knows that the reference that you might go to would be incorrect. And that's like a major thing, because even if you followed all the right steps, you might end up in the wrong conclusion, and your code can really help other people from making that mistake / future you from making the mistake all over again.
Exactly. And that's one of the key things that is why you want it to be reproducible. It's not only when you share this information, it's when you go back to it after you've done a revision, after you've worked on other documents, you've worked on other papers, other analyses, and then you want to come back to it. You're like, what was I doing? And R is really nice for being able to comment and give you more information. So what I also want to do here is, this is the zip file of the data that I've sent you all, and I will just unzip it very quickly, because what we want to do is we want to create a folder for this project, for this set of analyses. And so what we're going to do, now that I have this unzipped, I'm going to make a folder, and this can be, you can save this wherever you like, and you can, the goal of this also is we can move this. So you'll be able to take this folder and put it on Google Drive, you'll be able to put it on Box or Dropbox, and then it will run the same exact way on any of the computers as long as you're all up to date. So what I'm going to do is I will put both of these documents in here. And now when we open this up, you'll see that it has your Markdown document and the data. So I usually like to rename this data so that you're able to, you know that what's in there is your data, and you don't really need to think twice about that. Now, if we open R back up, what we can do, and you see, because I moved it, it's like, what are you doing? Why did you do that? And so you just need to open it back up. And it's all right there. And what is really nice about these R Markdown documents is knitting. And you can try to try this out. It should work for everybody because this is calling on the cars data set is something that's already default in R. So it shouldn't have any additional thing that you need to download. And what this is going to do is it will bring up this viewer. And this is what is really nice because it gives you these reproducible documents where now what I can do and what I have done in the past, when you knit it is going to take all of your analyses that are in your script. It is going to look at each of these things, which later on we can get into more detail about what and how you format all these things. But I think just a basic understanding of what this looks like is helpful. So it will run all of these code chunks and it will put it into a nice document, which you can see here. And then it's also going to throw it into, it will put it into the location of your directory and wherever this is being opened from. And so if we were to open this, it's an HTML file, which means that as long as you have a web browser, you'll be able to open it. And now you can see here are the analyses that were just done. And this can be very nice when you want to share with collaborators, you want to share with somebody the work that you've been doing. You can also knit to other documents like a PDF or a Word document, but this is not something that for the most part, there are additional steps to make sure that that happens. But for the most part, we are just gonna, you can always start fresh and just delete everything so that you have all of your, everything set up right here. And we'll go ahead and save periodically. And to start a new code chunk, what you can do is up here, insert, and then you can insert R. You can also, if you're familiar with other coding languages, you can use other languages as well. So if you have SQL installed, you can call that. There are other SQL packages, or Python, you can always call that and integrate them together, which is really nice. So you will see, if we insert an R chunk, that it will say the type of program that you want to use. And then anything between these three backticks, the top and the bottom, here on line 8 and line 10 for me, anything in there is going to be R code. And so usually whenever I set up a document, you want to include all of your libraries that you're going to be using. And this will most likely be, we'll have the tidyverse. And that's what we'll start with right now. And if you don't have the tidyverse installed, you will go down into the console. And then you want to put in quotes. It can be single or double. It does not matter. You can say install.packages. It's a little bit larger of a file because it is a collection of resources from the tidyverse. It is like dplyr, ggplot, it's a lot of different things. So now I've installed the tidyverse, and then up here, in order to run lines within a code chunk, you can have your cursor anywhere on the line, and then for PCs, you hit Control-Enter, and that will run the code. And you can see down here in the bottom, here in the console, it will have your output. But what's also nice about Markdown documents is it puts the output right below the code chunk that you just ran. And you can see that these are not errors. These are more of just information that is being provided to you. So there are conflicts with other packages that it is concerned about. So it's just saying, hey, there are these other packages that you already have, these other libraries like stats, which is usually a base function. And there's something called filter in the stats package. And it's saying, hey, we also have in dplyr, which was loaded in with the tidyverse, we also have something called filter. And what this is saying now is that when you say filter, it is going to look to dplyr for that. If there ever any times where you would want to use the stats version of it, in order to overcome any conflict, you will type the library name first. So down here, you can see I'm typing in stats and then a double colon, and then the filter function. And now it knows to look to the stats package instead of looking to dplyr. And that's one way that we can think about where there are conflicts. The tidyverse does a nice job at outlining that, but that might not always be the case where that happens. So you have your libraries, and then oftentimes what people do, and what is taught in a lot of courses, is using this set working directory. And this is where you tell R, hey, I want you to look anywhere in my computer, but then I want you to go through these specific folders, and I want you to look into this file that we have. So what you would do is say this, and then I would run that. Oh, and I think I need to change it to forward slashes or whatever. We're not going to use that. Don't ever use this. This is something that ultimately breaks your code down. And there are these, let's see. So if we look back here to another Allison Horst image, there is a package called here, which it can be really nice and really helpful. And this just, like, you don't want to say set working directory, haha, good luck. This can break your code down if you ever try to move it to a new location, if you ever try to share it with anybody, because that path is specific only to you. It is only going to work on your computer. It is only going to work in that particular folder. So there is this function called here, which you can use, and this is another library. So what this is going to do, and again, if you don't have it installed, you can go down to the bottom there and say install.packages, and then in quotes here. What this is going to do is basically set your working directory wherever this particular R Markdown document exists. So instead of having to do set working directory and put all of this information in, it looks to where the R Markdown document is and then tries to follow that up and identifies where it is and then uses that information. So what I can do is say, I want you to look here. I want you to look in this location. I run that and it's saying, all right, this is where I'm looking. I'm looking in that same folder that you're working on. If I send this to any of you, or if you're looking at code and you see this here function, that's going to look on your computer. It's not going to look on mine. It's going to look on your own. So it's really nice in being able to orient the project in a reproducible manner so that you can move things and you don't have to worry about finding that set WD.
So a question from Julia, does here work if your data are in a separate file or separate folder from where your markdown file is?
Yes, so what here is going to do is it just orients it first to the location that you're looking in. So
it's like Command F. Oh, sorry to interrupt, but
no.
Is that like Command F in a Word document, essentially, looking through all your files? Kind
of, yeah. So it's going to say, here is the home. This is the base, this home folder. And then you can tell it, which we'll do here so we can get rid of that. That was just a highlight. This is where it's going to be looking. And we want to read in a data set, which I'll call beer. Why not? And then you want to assign what we're reading in the data. We want to assign that to this object. And it is a CSV file. So we'll do read.csv. And then this is where you can see up in this document, or like this pop-up, which is also really nice about RStudio, is it has suggestions for you. And what this function is looking for is a file and then all of these other default things. So we want to tell it where the file is. And the way we do that is by saying here. And so when we say here, it's going to look to this main folder, but we want it to look into data. So then what we do is say data / and then I forget what it was called. We'll do breweries. And if I know how to spell, then we can run that. And you can see that it is, because it looked first to here, which is that main home folder, and then it will look into the data folder, and then it will look for this data set. So then what is really nice is after you run that, see, you'll see it down here in the console, is it will appear in your environment. And it's about that time where my neighbor decides it's time to mow again, even though he's mowed a few times this week. You can see here in the beer that it loaded in all of our data. That it has, you can click on it here in the environment, or what you can do down in the console is capital V view, and then the name of the object, whatever you named it. If you named it something different, you can do that, but it will pull it up. And this is what's really nice, is it reads in the data and then you're able to look at it, which is one thing that I think SPSS does a nice job of, is orienting you to what the data look like. But what you can, now you can see the data, you can take a look at what each of the objects are. So this beer data set is just a collection of, these are all the microbreweries or craft breweries in the United States. I don't know from when, but it has it separated by, this is an ID number. Here the X variable has the name of the brewery, has where, and then where it's located. There is another way to load data in, which you can do. I don't usually do it. So you can go import data set, and you can import it from text, and then you can locate it, which I'll walk through that. I don't know why this is so massive. And so it will load it in, and it will ask you all these things, which these are defaults from when you are using this read.csv file. And then you hit import, it will load it in. But if you do it that way, and I share this with somebody, I see I have this brewery's data set here, but because I did the point and click and I did import data set and then found it, this doesn't exist. You can see that it ran it down here in the console. So if you would like to do that, what you have to do is make sure to copy paste this, put it up in your file, and then update that where the file is located. Which it's just a lot easier to type it out and have it all there for you to see. The other thing which is, I think, really important about R and understanding how R operates and why I like it so much is you are never directly working with the raw data file. We are never changing or updating the data that live in these CSV files. Whereas with SPSS, you are working directly with that data, and if you delete a column or you recode it in a way and you save it, that's it. That's where it's saved and that's done. we can, in this console and in our markdown documents, we can update it, we can compute things, we can delete columns, we can select new columns. And at the end of the day, as long as we're not then writing it back, you have to be very aware of actually typing out, write a new CSV, and then save it on top of this one. But these will be exactly the same. So it's what R is basically doing is it's taking all of the information from these CSV files and it's holding it in its memory right here in the environment. So it's basically copying it in, and then you're able to manipulate it, update it. And at the end of the day, if you delete a column or you delete something, all you have to do is rerun this line and your data will look exactly the same.
This might be my favorite thing.
Yeah.
About R. Like, I think it combines this is true, like open science, as well as one of my biggest like fears in project management and data management has been people saving over the raw files or the first downloaded file, which then makes it impossible to retrace what's happening. Particularly when you're new to data cleaning, I think you're really liable to do that. And so R kind of saves you from yourself in a way that I've used SPSS, data, and SAS all at different labs, and those don't do that for you. So I really love this, and this is the big reason why I'm hoping to make this switch over to R full time.
And so what you can do also, yeah, I think that's really great, is you're operating outside of the raw data, which is a big relief. It feels less confining, and you're able to do, it feels like you're just able to do a lot more with it. And so what you can do up above or below is say, like, here is where I'm and so we have the data here, you're able to load it in, and then we can type down here whatever, we can add in a new code chunk, and then these will be separate, which is another way to organize. Is you're able to section off, here is where I'm loading the data, here's where I'm updating or manipulating it, and then this section is for my different analyses. One comment that came through, which is really helpful, is once you get longer and larger markdown documents, you can organize the chunks a little bit better. So what you can do here is say, so it will look and it'll say your computer will, or RStudio will look and see R is the language that we want to operate this code in, but then you can tell it, you can name the chunk. So this is loading in the data. And this could be like you're manipulating the data sets, and you should spell it right, whatever it is that you're doing. But then what you can do is you can see down here, it starts organizing it for you. And you can begin jumping down to other code chunks later on or earlier in the document, which is really nice and helpful to navigate. And I'll show you a quick example of what it is that I've used this for in a way that can be really, really helpful. So I'm collaborating with some people at another university through my mentor, and I'm doing latent growth curve modeling. So I have lots of like loading in the data, I have manipulating the data, creating visual plots, and then I have various steps in going from different types of growth models. So going no growth, linear growth, quadratic, and really looking through all of these. And this is a lot. It can be difficult to organize and manage, but you can see here, I have everything named for the most part, except for that untitled section. I have it organized in a way that is easily readable and digestible. And then what is really nice, because I recognize that not everybody is fluent in R or would like to look at that document, I knit it to an HTML file. And this is what it can eventually look like in terms of organization, and you can share it. So you can update how it looks, you can have table of contents down here. So here is different growth models. Here is where I impute the data, and you can have it output however you like. And this can be really nice when you're sharing information. One thing that's also amazing about R is you're able to update and include tables. You can make tables, you can make correlation tables, and anytime you change or update things, it will update the table. That's another amazing aspect of R that I really, really like. So I realize we're kind of getting close to the end here. I wanted to pause for a second to see if there are any comments or other thoughts that you have right now. I'd like to eventually keep moving forward with this, but I also understand that this isn't what everybody's interested in, and that it's just a restricted interest of mine. So Kate, are there other things? I was trying to get to some aspects that we had touched on with why use R, but are there things that you wanted to talk about right now?
Yeah, so I guess from the perspective of someone who is less initially enthusiastic about R, that's why I think it's important and why I want to make the switch, and also like why I haven't previously. So in talks with Dustin before we had this, I gave a kind of like pithy answer when I was just like, oh, because I was like, why haven't I learned R previously? Is I was like, well, because I've been full-time working, which initially was just because I felt like, it's the same sunken cost kind of thing. If I'm going to work, I'm going to work in SPSS, because while I was learning the ropes of my job and trying to navigate that, it just seemed simplest to use like the system that was already implemented. But as I've been like working on my own project, and as I've been like learning stats or like relearning stats, because I constantly forget what I've learned, the thing I really like about R and like think is, maybe for me personally, one of the like reasons, there are a lot of other good broader reasons, is that R makes you take individual steps in a way that SBS and the other like different softwares don't. So for example, if you're doing moderation, you need to write it out. There are certain step-by-step things you need to take, rather than having, for example, like the one that I'm most familiar with is like mediation and SPSS. And that's really simple. You load in like what goes where. You don't necessarily need to know the components. So it's not really an active learning process as it is in R. And so I think it really helps you become more comfortable with the different steps of R. And I think this is something Dustin told me maybe a year and a half ago. And yeah, I agree. R is like really intimidating. That's a really good point. So I think I'm going to steal it and everyone can read this. But yeah, I think it's good to be uncomfortable, and R is just like a perfect example of that. And the adjustment to grad school, I imagine there will be a lot of uncomfortable learning experiences, and so R is like a good primer in that. And also, even though like I think it's so transferable, like what you'll learn in R to other codes, in the way that I first learned on SAS, and then when I learned on Stata, it was similar, but it wasn't transferable knowledge. And so I think that's really helpful. But now I'm kind of blathering on, so I'm going to cut myself off.
It definitely is. It's a whole new language. It's a whole new way to think and organize the way you think. But like Kate was saying, that these skills can be transferable in how you think about these other aspects of your projects, or how you organize your code or set things up, because it might make sense to you. But then if you are wanting to share this with somebody else, how would you restructure it, or what notes would you include? I think that really helps to push you to understand what you're doing more thoroughly. But yeah, it can be really scary, and it can take a very long time to do it. I think what can be very helpful is having a project that you're working on, and working through those steps bit by bit. and recognize the fact that your code is not going to look pretty. It's not going to work the first few times, but that it's something to keep moving forward with. And in the long run, you'll be able to do a lot more with it in terms of making tables and is one of the biggest time savers that I found. And what's really nice is I've been trying to write results sections, you can actually take the beta weights or your findings, pull it from your results and put it right in the text. And then if you have to update the analysis, say you forgot to include, like you found a new data set that you realized didn't merge right or whatever, and you're able to just hit run and it will rerun everything. It will put all the new stats in and you don't have to worry about, did I change that cell? Did I do this? That's where a lot of errors actually come in when it comes to writing papers, is these easy things that we often will take an SPSS output, put it in Excel, reformat it because SPSS does a poor job at making things look nice. And then you have to reformat it in Excel. And then you have 15 Excel documents because you did it 4 different times. And then you're like, which is the most up-to-date one? And one of the other things that's really nice about using a markdown document is it is basically just a text file with some fancy bits to it. And you can save it to a version control system. So eventually down the road, we can talk about using GitHub and integrating GitHub into your workflow. And that's something that's been really helpful for me, that I'm able to, and how I saved a lot of my project in the past is you can push everything up to GitHub and then it checks to see where there are discrepancies or where things have been updated. And then you're like, oh, I forgot to do this. And then, or your advisor says, hey, can you do this analysis? And then you can look to your history and be like, you know what, we actually did this 5 weeks ago and it didn't work. So it really helps outline and give you these steps to go back on in case you forgot or you ran a bunch of t-tests or whatever. Yeah, there's lots of really awesome things that can be done in RStudio that I think, just because it is intimidating and it can be really overwhelming to think about making your tables and making your code look good and having all of the understanding. So that's what I want this space to be, or just me as a resource. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have or comments. You can do it through Twitter or email or whatever, or you can ask me in person if you see me. Maybe not just like randomly. If you're like, hey, I have this art thing that you need to help with, I'd probably help. But so yeah, I'm rambling on, and I could do that for a long time. And so I'll stop. Kate, please rein me in.
No, it's good. And I enjoy it. I guess we should transition into recommendations, future directions.
Yeah.
So I have no future directions. No, I'm going on a mini camping away from people trip that I'm really excited for. So I guess I'm taking last week's advice to go out into nature seriously, but also I feel like and I think everyone is reaching the end of their semester, so taking a little bit of time to not be tied to your phone or computer is something that I'm gonna attempt to do and would highly recommend, because I just feel like I'm running on fumes and I need a day or two where I'm not either not working and feeling guilty about it, or working but not at my usual rates. So that's my future direction and recommendation.
So you're telling people to get away from their computers when we just did a whole session on...
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Forget everything you've learned today. No, but first I'm going to do R this afternoon for real. Not do R, that's not a thing. I'm going to analyze data in R. And so, yeah, I'm going to do that first. So that's my future direction.
Nice. I think future direction for me is, what was I? Quantitude, the podcast. definitely check that out. I think I've recommended it. I've talked about it before, but this is a formal recommendation. And this is something that is from two really bright, smart guys, and they just understanding quantitative methods, and really wanting to promote that within their work. And at times they can be kind of like what you would think of as a stereotypical dad and have dumb dad jokes. You can fast forward through those. It's just really great to listen to. So definitely check that out.